edition of Little Talks with PopCultX. I am Daniel, as you know, and as you might already know as well, PopCultX is a podcast or YouTube show that talks about all things pop culture from a Gen X point of view. Well, every now and then we do like to mix it up and bring in guest contributors from a different generation to get their perspective on pop culture, or in this case, one particular huge pop culture hot topic. So that being said, let's please welcome Tori King to the show. Welcome, Tori.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So please give us a little brief bio about yourself so that way the audience can know who you are and maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Tori King, and I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. But my family packed up and moved it to Oklahoma. So I tell people I was born in Austin, but I was raised in Oklahoma. I'm an Oklahoma City gal, and went to OU for college. So pretty much my entire family, my entire family wanted to disown me because we were Longhorn fans growing up. So, that was kind of an issue because we're a big football family. Actually, the OU game's going on right now, so I've got it on the background. OU Texas game. I studied broadcast journalism in college and got my master's degree and graduated and moved out to San Diego after I got married. And now I work as a journalist at Fox 5. So I get to write the news every day.
Really cool. So I'm from San Diego. So what brought you out to San Diego? What was the factor that said, was it the allure of the ocean, or was it the tacos? What?
I mean, those things are both great, but it was my husband, actually. We got married, and he's in the Marine Corps. So he got stationed at Camp Pendleton, and we've been here ever since.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I definitely cannot complain. There are worse duty stations, so.
Definitely. Well, we're here, Tori, and I invited you on the show because, like me, you're a huge fan of Apple TV Plus's awesome Emmy award-winning show, Ted Lasso.
The best show.
It really is. I mean, I can't argue with that. It just has everything you look for in a show. There's tension, there's laughter, there's tears, there's everything you want when you turn on the TV that you want to feel the range of emotions. Just turn on this show.
Yeah, straight on. Yeah.
Ted Lasso just wrapped up their season 2. So what a better moment than to get on here and talk about the show for a little bit, just to, there's so many different recap articles out there and, people giving their opinion, but I want to hear from a fan of the show who really likes it. And I've seen your tweets, and I'll share with everyone your Twitter handle so they can go follow you. You really capture a lot of the emotion, and you could put into precise words of what's the storytellers are trying to convey. So give me your takeaway on the season 2 of Ted Lasso.
Oh man. Creative. I think a lot of people actually wanted to hate season 2 because season 1 was so good. And a lot of TV shows go through something called the sophomore slump, right? Where the second season's not as good as the first season. And the first season was just so much better. Nothing can beat that. So I think a lot of people actually wanted to hate season 2, and they did hate season 2 because my opinion of why people hated it was because it got real. And people, people who are not real Ted Lasso fans, I think just wanted to get a quick and easy laugh. They wanted to sit on the couch and check out and not be emotionally invested in a TV show about soccer of all things, like freaking soccer. Right. Come on. But that's just the beauty of the show is, and the second season is that it's not just a comedy. And Jason Sudeikis has said that, and that's why he's a mastermind. And maybe the modern day, Beethoven or Mozart, I don't know, of comedy. He makes you fall in love with characters. He makes you care about the characters who in any other TV show would be just throwaways. Or, I mean, think about something like Family Guy. Like, their characters reset every episode, right? You don't care what happens to them the episode before. But the amazing and beautiful thing about Ted Lasso and the writers and Bill Lawrence and Brendan Hunt is every detail matters.
Yes,
so
that's very true.
Something will happen like in season 1 and it will be just some throwaway joke that, Ted says. But it will come back in season 2. And if you're really paying attention, if you're a true fan, you're like, oh my gosh, that just tied up a loose end from season 1. Like, it's the small things that the real fans can appreciate. And I thought season 2, yes, it got real. Yes, it got emotional. It was really hard to watch at times because it just absolutely broke your heart. But this show is so much more than just something to, make you sit there and laugh at. So I actually loved season 2. And was it as good as season 1? I don't know, because I just fell so in love with season 1. But was it a sophomore slump? Absolutely not. I think this was exactly what the characters were setting up to be, which was Empire Strikes Back. I'm sure we'll get to that later, but that's exactly what happened. This was the in-between.
You're right. It was when season 2 was just beginning. I think the couple days before, I tweeted out to Bill Lawrence. I was like, I'm afraid that a lot of people will not like season 2 because of what you just said. Their expectations, I guess, are so high of what season 1 gave us and all of its comedy bits and whatnot, that season 2 is never going to live up to that. And he was like, how can it? He actually answered. He was like, how can it? We just got to accept that and move on. And once I realized, you know what, he's right. Just enjoy the show for what it is, not try and make it just a continuation of the comedy bit of what season 1 was, and you'll love it so much more. And I did. It really was. And I think you hit it on the head with that. It brought up a lot of tough topics. It didn't just stick to the comedy. It really focused on the mental health, and the mental health in sports, I think, is a huge topic that really isn't really addressed, especially here in America. It's just kind of like brushed aside. And it's something that I know that I've always looked at. I never need to go to therapy. That's not for me, But after seeing this, it could sway me that, maybe it is helpful to speak to someone who's licensed and knows what they're talking about in some topics. So I think that was a huge aspect of this season, and I'm so glad that they brought that up.
Right. Oh man, that was huge. I mean, you're absolutely right. Mental health in sports, and like, what a perfect time for not just season 1, which was, look, we're all, isolated, quarantined, sad, depressed. This is a great show to watch and make us laugh while we're at home. But then season 2 comes out right after the Summer Olympics. And what happened at the Summer Olympics with, Simone Biles and mental health. And I mean, when have we ever seen an Olympic athlete not compete because of mental health? And that's exactly like the whole thing that season 2 was about. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that the writer's room or Jason Sudeikis is someone who can tell the future, but I mean, come on now.
I know you're absolutely correct. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of things that I noticed and I'll touch on a few that I really appreciate about season 1 and season 2 together is, one thing was the Nate, who's fabulously and brilliantly acted by Nick Mohammed. His character, I think, took on the biggest change and had the most, in a subtle way at first. He was just so brilliant in that role as Nate Shelley. His parallels to Keeley, played by Juno Temple, and how they both started as like maybe, shadows to other footballers, I guess I'll call them, because they were in the backgrounds. But by the end of season 2, and we're just telling spoilers because if you haven't seen the shows, go watch them, then come back. If not, who cares?
Okay, good. Because I didn't know if I was going to be able to hold it in.
No, don't worry about giving any spoilers. It's been a few days now. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And at the end, they're now both bosses of their in their own worlds. So they've both risen together. Yes, you could argue that one was nurtured more and one just had, the nature of the beast, so to speak, and his own determination and his own traumas that he was going through.
Exactly.
And how they both ended up as the bosses. That was just so it was just like, wow, I couldn't believe that they actually, well, I guess I could believe, but that they were able to write that in and see those characters grow to that extent. So that was one thing that I took away from season 2.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. And I think that is another thing too about season 2, is it was all about character growth. It was about, all right, where are they going to end up in season 3? I kind of like to use it as like, all right, if you've got a chip and you're using chips and you're eating chips and queso or chips and dip, right? The chip is just the vehicle to get the vessel to get the queso in your mouth, right? That's what season 2 was for the characters, right? It was the vessel to take them from here's where they started. This is where their destiny is and where they're going to end up. Season 2 just shows you how they got there. And gosh, Nick Mohammed, that actor, is incredible, who plays Nate. And he's good when Twitter hates him. I mean, they were sending his actual Twitter account like hate messages. I'm like, okay, guys, this is a real life actor. You guys got to chill here. Right. Don't be mad at the guy who plays Nate. He's a real person, but that's how you know that his performance was so powerful. Oh, hi, there's my Dalmatian. Hello, Cicero.
Nice.
Hi, buddy. But that's how you know his performance was just so powerful and realistic for people. Gosh, it was hard to see him. I don't want to say turn evil, but it was hard to see him end season 2 the way that he did. But there's been so many hints about it. There's been so many hints about what was going to happen with him. And I think, again, with mental health, it just shows you when you're an angry person, your anger can make you one of two things. It can make you a better person and you can use your anger for good. Or your anger can make you a bitter, salty person who tears down people around them and you use it for bad. And, take a look at Roy Kent. Roy Kent used his anger for good, which, again, we'll get to that later, which there was hinting towards that too. But then, Nate uses his anger to hurt other people like he's been hurt.
Yeah. And I think I read somewhere a statement about Nate that really made sense to me, is that he was never shown to be a nice person. He was just very meek. Ooh. He didn't have any confidence. And that, and when I read that, I was like, wow, that is so true. Because we didn't know who Nate was, because he was just so very reserved and and shy. But once he was given that confidence from Ted Lasso, his true, what made him got to rise up and shine. And we got to see that. So we don't know if he was, we just kind of assumed that, I guess. And that we saw that, and maybe we put that on because we wanted to believe that, the nice, quiet guy in the corner is going to always be the nice, quiet guy, even when he gets power. Yes. And it was really an eye opener, because when I saw his issues with his father, that he never got the acceptance that he wanted from his dad. He never was able to make his dad proud, no matter how hard he tried, no matter what he did. And I think that was his whole motivation for everything that he does, is to get his dad's respect and have his dad say, hey, son, I'm proud of you.
Oh, absolutely. And, wow.
Yeah, maybe I'm just reading more into it than what the writers are doing, but that's what I'm picking up.
No. And you know what? I think that read into it. Like, there's one thing about these writers, like I said, everyone just thinks they're just comedy writers, but the people in that writing room are so beyond that. They're orchestrating something so much more than just a simple comedy. Like, I mean, everything is like the butterfly effect. Like I said, every little thing matters, and every detail comes back for some reason, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, you just talked about that, blew my mind. He was never nice. We just assumed he was. I never thought about that. And if you think about it, like, what was the first scene that we ever saw Nate in? And he was yelling at Ted and Beard to get off the field.
That's true.
It wasn't a meek and quiet guy who was being nice. He was like, "Hey, get off the field. Like, who are you to get on?" I mean, that was his very first line.
That's very true. That is very true.
So, man, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, wow. That kind of blew my mind.
All right. Another topic that's really played out well in season 2, and I brought it up a little bit with Nate, was everyone seemed to have issues with their father. So I don't know if that's something that the writers are pulling from their own experience with, but it seemed like, so Jamie Tartt's dad, Ted Lasso's dad, Rebecca's dad, Nate's dad,
Roy's dad.
Who else?
Wasn't even in the picture, really. His grandpa was.
And his niece's dad,
mm-hmm.
That was hilarious when they had that scene with the elementary school teacher, and that was that was one of my top moments. But I'll get to that in a little bit. But what I want to focus on is Jamie Tartt, played brilliantly by Phil Dunster, who was fabulous, and I think his character growth is also exponential, and I can't wait to see where they take him in season 3. But after, I think it was episode 8 called Man City, where they get a brutal loss, and Jamie Tartt's dad and his drunken friends all enter into the locker room. Now, you know what scene this is, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll just paint a little picture for people listening. His father and friends enter the locker room, and they start belittling everyone in the club. And then Jamie ends up having to punch his dad in front of everyone. And then Coach Beard pulls him out, and there's a silence. It's just a deafening silence in the room. And I was on the edge of my seat there. And then to see Roy Kent, played, oh my gosh, by Brett Goldstein, just wonderful, walk up, embrace Jamie Tartt. And for a moment, you see Jamie Tartt seize up and then relax into him. That, I don't normally get choked up on TV shows, because they don't really do much for me. But that one really hit me hard. Yeah.
Oh, I just got chills talking about it, remembering it. That was such, you never thought that Roy was ever going to do. If anything, you thought, okay, Ted's going to go up and hug him. Right? You're going to think Ted's or someone else, the last person in the room who you think is going to go hug Jamie Tartt is Roy Kent. Right?
Right.
And you captured that moment perfectly too. Like, it took me a couple times to see it, but he did. His shoulders kind of like went up. Like, I'm not used to someone embracing me. I'm not used to someone like loving me.
Right.
Like, if anything, he was probably flinching out of habit from his dad hitting him.
That's true. Yeah.
And we saw that in season 1 in the training room scene when his dad was throwing shoes at him, gosh, what a beautiful small detail that they did not have to put in there, but they did, just that flinch. Gosh, that scene was so pivotal for their relationship. It's not just a comedy, like I said, and I lost it in that scene. But I was honestly a little disappointed in Ted and the rest of the team in that scene, because I thought more people were going to sit there and embrace Jamie. But you can sort of see why maybe the writers chose not to have the whole team do that, because it wouldn't have been as meaningful.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, there's just something so specific about Roy being the one to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, we're your family, bro.
Yeah, especially with the history between the two characters. So it was more meaningful in that regard. You're right.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned Star Wars earlier. Um, Tell me a little bit more what your thoughts on were that and the similarities between the Star Wars original trilogy and Ted Lasso, and how I think even Jason Sudeikis mentioned something about that.
Oh,
Give us a little
yeah.
bit more about that.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Star Trek,
Me too.
Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all those nerdy movies. I love them. And so as soon as I heard them making Star Wars references, I'm like, all right, where's this going? And you're right. Jason Sudeikis has mentioned Star Wars in interviews, different talk shows. He's like, this is going to be a theme, so watch out. And sure enough, as soon as Higgins mentions, I'm going to have to go home and explain the kissing scene, between Princess Leia and Luke in Empire Strikes Back, I lost it. I'm like, oh man, because I remember that talk with my parents too. My dad was like, they're brother and sister, but we'll get to that later. And I'm like, okay, Dad, whatever. But just him mentioning that, and then the ominous "May the Force be with you," it was a joke. But we all kind of know, all right, this means buckle up because something's about to happen. If you're a Star Wars fan, they only say "May the Force be with you." If you're about to take a journey, you're going somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so just that one phrase, I was like, oh no, Empire Strikes Back, here we go. So for people who maybe don't know Star Wars, this is where the bad guys essentially win for the most part. For most of the movie, the bad guys win. And Darth Vader is just absolutely evil and betrays his son. And the whole premise of this Empire Strikes Back movie is about betrayal. And I think that set the arc perfectly for someone's getting freaking betrayed in Ted Lasso this season. And it's going to be Big O Ted. He's got a huge target on his back. He's had a target on his back the entire show. He was betrayed last season. So, the answer was just who. And that's what season 2, again, was about, was who is going to betray? Who's going to come out on top? And so it was just setting up that beautiful scene for the season finale episode of, this is the last, 5 to 10 minutes of Empire Strikes Back. We're going to see the betrayal, and we're going to see someone essentially get backstabbed. So it's been alluding to that the whole time. And, you could guess it was either going to be Jamie betrayed, Roy and Keeley. And they maybe, I think, threw that in there to make you think it was going to be that, and something else, maybe kind of give you something so that you're not sniffing the right trail. You think maybe Rupert's going to betray someone. I mean, he's evil, right? He's the guy that we're supposed to hate. True. But that was another reason people didn't like season 2. They're like, there's no villain. There's no conflict. But there were so many subtleties of, oh, just wait, there's a big issue coming. And so I don't know if you wanted to talk about more of the actual, this is when the Empire Strikes Back. This is the moment when Ted was betrayed, since I sort of led up to that. But
go ahead.
Sure. Okay.
You're on a roll.
So go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it's just the second to last episode leading up to the season finale. Everything's going great. The therapist, Dr. Fieldstone, which I absolutely love her, adore her. She's such a great character. I'm so glad that they added her. And I don't think we've seen the last of Sharon Fieldstone. I think she'll be back next season. But it's sort of like Ted's whole again, and he's good. And then at the last second, he gets this text from Trent Krim, the Independent, saying, hey, here's tomorrow's paper. You're on the front page. This is what it says. And it's just exposing Ted's biggest insecurity. And it was them telling everyone, hey, during the game that he left, it was not food poisoning. It was a panic attack. And does Ted Lasso have what it takes to coach this team? Essentially, is panic, or are panic attacks, is anxiety a weakness?
Right.
And, I actually love Trent Krim for sending that text to Ted. Because it'd be one thing if he just woke up the next morning and saw it, but Ted has changed Trent Krim for the better. And, you know, at the very end, he says it was sent to us by an anonymous source. And then you have the 3 dots pop up and it's like, the source was Nate. And you're like, there it is. Empire Strikes Back. That's Vader. Nate is our Vader. Got it. And you knew that it was going to be Nate before he even said it.
Yeah, of course.
You knew. Everyone knew it was going to be Nate. And then, but you actually just couldn't believe it even after he said it. You're like, gosh, dang it, Nate. Come on, man. So that was the Empire Strikes Back moment. You know, that was, you're like, all right, this is what this whole season has been leading up to. The next episode, how is Ted going to react? You know?
Right. Let me ask you, as a journalist, what revealing your sources, I know that's a huge topic. What would it take for you to reveal a source to someone that the article's about?
Oh, I mean, gosh.
Trent Grimm said he had the utmost respect for him, and that's why he's telling him. So what would it take for you to reveal a source? I mean, I couldn't imagine doing that, so I don't know.
Oh, gosh, yeah. As a journalist, life or death, man. I mean, that is, you know, the biggest, you're not going to do this as a journalist, because keeping people's identities a secret is the entire job. I mean, someone's got to be about to die in order to reveal a source, you know, even if it's your best friend, and if you really, really, really care about your best friend, even then it gets dicey, because it's like, to compare it to something else, you know, it's like a HIPAA violation for a doctor, right? It's like a doctor going around and telling people, oh, this is what medication they're on, this is all their issues, or even a therapist. This would be a therapist revealing, like, hey, so-and-so struggling with this. You don't reveal your sources. And that was a big issue, again, on Twitter. Everyone was blowing up, Trent Krim's the worst journalist. Like, how could he just, they were like, this show's so unrealistic. Like, you can't just unveil your sources like that and get away with it. And I was like, okay, in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to say anything about this because we still have a whole nother episode to go through. So maybe the consequences are going to catch up with him then. But people were so quick to just be like, sorry, Cicero, go on. People were just so quick to be like, oh, Jason, oh, you have a dog too. Jason and them, I love how they just let it play out, because everyone thinks that, oh, they don't know anything about journalism. They don't know the repercussions of giving a source away. But let me tell you, Jason Sudeikis, Bill Lawrence, all of them know exactly what they're doing, exactly what they're talking about. They know the repercussions of a journalist revealing their source. And here in the US, you're fired immediately. And you're never going to be a trusted journalist. No one's going to hire you again. And there could actually be some legal fallback from that too. I mean, you could get sued for stuff like that. I don't know. And I love that they have a Twitter account for Trent Krim specifically. That's one of my favorite things.
That was going to be a next question for you, is about the Twitter accounts for the players. Yeah. And the coaches and different individuals.
Well, you gotta wonder who they're run by. I mean, obviously in an interview, Jason Sudeikis said that the TED Instagram account was headed by him, but that he lets the writers kind of post. So that's what I assume the rest of the characters are too. But I love how people were making such a big fuss about it on Twitter, about Trent giving away his source, that the actual Trent Krim Twitter was like, okay, guys, first off, I got to lay out some rules here, right? Journalism and the press has different rules in England than it does in the US. So you guys don't know what you're talking about. And then, and the second thing is, basically just watch and see, like just wait and see, because you don't know. And then in the season finale, we see him waiting for Ted to come out. And I think he also told Ted, because Ted's the one person in the entire world who would not give away that Trent told him an anonymous source.
Yeah.
Like it takes a certain amount of trust too. I mean, Trent Krim has never given away a source. I mean, he's seen as this diabolical journalist the entire time who's just out to get you. One of my favorite lines that I don't think is talked about enough is when they're in the office and he's like, you remind me of that vacuum thing that goes around and picks up dirt, looking for dirt all the time. And he's like, a Roomba? And he's like, that's the one. I'm like, I think I laughed more than anyone in the entire world did at that joke, because I'm like, oh, this is the funniest thing, comparing a journalist to a Roomba. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a beautiful joke and joke placement. And it's like, yeah, that's his job. But on the other hand, also someone who is a journalist, being a journalist, you know, Nate went to Trent to give that information out. That information was probably also given to every other member of the press, every other newspaper, you know, TV broadcast out there. So if I was Trent Krim and Nate came to me with that, I would personally want to write that story myself. And here's why. I want to get it right. Right? If I'm going to throw someone that I care about and, you know, love and respect and that I've grown to be a friend with, I want to be the one to release that story first, because I don't want anyone else out there, you know, adding in unnecessary, you know, false narratives, things that just simply are not true. And so, like I said, I understand as a journalist, that's the toughest part. You have to write about people. You have to write terrible things about people that you adore and or love all the time. You know, your best friend's dad turns out to be a murderer. Like, that's going to get in the paper whether you write it or not.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be in the paper the next day. So do you want to be the first one to talk about it? And do you want to be the first one to write about it and make sure that all the facts are correct so that it's the story that you know and you want out there? Or are you going to let the other journalists who are just out there to get Ted, you know, to run the story themselves and maybe throw in things that aren't true? That's the hardest part, is if you don't write the story yourself, it's out of your control. But what Trent could do with that information was put the truth out there. And then, you know, we see the very next day, he was fired. And that was something that people on Twitter were talking about. And it's like, I told you guys to wait. There were going to be consequences. Like, there's every action in the show has had some consequences, whether it's delayed or whatever, but it was coming. Trent, there's no way that he was going to be able to give away an anonymous source and say a journalist. So, gosh, that was a tough scene as a journalist to watch. I was like, man. And then just the joke that they made it into is, hey, you know, now you're Trent Krim, independent. Like, that is just so clever. Like Jason probably was sitting there in 2017 writing this. He's like, let's make a journalist who gets fired. And like, you know, then he becomes a one-man journalist, the independent. Like, they were planning all these, like, 5 years ago. He just held it in his head this whole time. Like, I would love, if I could read minds, Jason Sudeikis, that's whose mind I want to open up and just like see what goes on in there. Like, is there a hamster and a pinwheel running around? And it's like, no, there are so many things going on in there.
It's just a room full of typewriters and people just typing out things. Just nonstop. Yeah. Yeah. I would like to see that. You're absolutely right. And to take it back one step further and relating it to Trent Grimm's father, after Jason or Ted Lasso made that joke, he's like, yeah, my dad said the same thing to me when I so he made that reference, another reference to a father. So I guess that was the whole theme from beginning to end. So that was really cool.
Yes. But I mean, like that, what a wholesome little thing to say. Like, you know what, Ted, you remind me of my dad. Like, my dad said that same thing and he's like, oh, this must be a good guy. Like that, they didn't have to add that in there. But, you know, it shows you, it's like, Trent Krim knows the difference between a good guy and a bad guy. He knows the difference between a genuine person and someone who's just like Rupert. And I also loved when he was talking to him and he was like, You have a car? I thought you rode a bike. he was like, why would you think I rode a bike? Is it the long hair and the way I dress? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Living out here in California. Living out here in California, you just look at people like, you know who bike people are here, right? You know, like, I don't look like a person who rides a bike. I don't own a bike. I mean, you know, I'm athletic and I'll go running and stuff, but I don't own a bike. But the way that Trent Crimm looked, he's like, yeah, okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Why did they make him get locked out of his car? Like, that was just such an unnecessary slight from the writers' room. They're like, let's let him not be able to get in his car. I wish it would have been so much funnier if he would have been like, oh, well, my trunk's open. And then he pulled out like some random bike that was stashed in his trunk and then rode off. Like,
because he is a bike person, yeah.
Yeah, I also don't think we've seen the last of Trent Crimm. I think we're going to see him in season 3. But maybe he'll take over the PR role that just opened up.
Yeah, hey, why not?
I don't know.
Real briefly, the end of the season finale, that little montages that they do of, 3 months later, 5 weeks later, whatever. I don't know if I was a big fan of that. I mean, I get what they tried to do. They had to progress time and they were telling the story. But I don't know if, maybe that could have been like cutscenes or something. Or, we're so used to cutscenes now from Marvel and the MCU and how they do mid-credit scenes and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't want to say they were throwaways because they played an important, they tied up roles for like, we see Sam Obayasha buy a storefront to open up a Nigerian restaurant because he wants to spread his heritage to London. And that's the reason why he chose to stay. We didn't even get into that. That's a whole separate thing.
Oh yeah.
But I enjoyed that, but I don't know if it needed to be directly tied to the episode. What are your thoughts about that?
I didn't love it either. I don't think we liked it because it was so uncharacteristic. And
yeah, I think so.
Everything about Ted Lasso has just been so true to character. And again, that's why people didn't like the second season because they thought it was going to be just like the first season. It wasn't my favorite, but it did have purpose. It did have purpose. And I think also we know Jason and Bill Lawrence and Brendan have alluded to it so many times. This is only going to be a 3-season show. This is only going to be a 3-season show. At least this specific storyline. Could there maybe be something after this? I don't know, maybe. But they had to fit in stuff between the next season. And I think they also needed that to happen in order to show you what happens with Nate.
That's true. Maybe
going into, but I also saw something on Twitter the other day and I just pulled it up because I want to read it so that this is not coming from me. I wish that I had thought of this, but this is just brilliant. So that book that Beard has been reading throughout the entire series, is so important. And basically, so it was 5 days later, 3 weeks later, and 2 months later, right? So essentially that book talks about how leadership is structured, talks about the pyramid of leadership, right. Whatever.
Pyramid of success, right?
Pyramid of success, yeah. So originally in the book, the first ever formation used in English football was 1-2-7. So that's where you had the people along the field. And that was all offense and no defense. So just constant attack, score. It's all about scoring, who can score the most. That was the first formation ever. Then they moved to a 2-3-5, which was the pyramid formation. And so you had 2 people, 3 people, then 5. And that was the pyramid formation because of its shape, and everyone starts using it. And it goes back to Ted giving people those army men, right? what are those army men meant for? And they're supposed to protect you. They're supposed to defend you. His whole thing was about defending people, you know, sticking up for people, not necessarily attack or offense. And so the whole premise of the episode was the inverted pyramid, which was 5-3-2. So it's still everyone that had attacked him before, right? Rebecca, Jamie, Roy, now they're all coming to his defense. And so that's why it's the inverted pyramid. But that's why I think those specific numbers were used, and that's why this person thinks they were used too, was because it's the inverted pyramid numbers. 5 days, 3 days.
Really cool.
Or 5 days, 3 weeks, 2 months later. What? Like the detail, the planning that went into the execution. So although you and I didn't like that, like we were not huge fans, it was super uncharacteristic of all of the episodes. I mean, there's a reason behind it. If that is the reason, I have not seen any other explanation as to why those you know, fast forwards were in there other than that. And I think that's a pretty dang good. That's really cool.
It
makes sense.
It does. I remember reading about how that was a book Beard was reading at the very first episode and how they continued it on, and the inversion and them tying it in with that. Wow. Details matter.
Every stinking detail. I'm like, is there going to be like a piece of lint that they picked off their shirt in season 1 that's going to come back in season 3? Like, oh man, if I didn't pick that lint off my shirt, like, you know, Rebecca wouldn't have died or whatever. Like, I'm not saying Rebecca's going to die in season 3. You never know. But, gosh, every little thing matters. So I wasn't a fan, but obviously I think there was a reason behind it. And it is such a limited series. They had to sort of give you,
push
you know,
the ball forward.
that one commercial, it's like, hey, I got you $1. Like, you know, here's something hanging in front of your face for next season. Like, here you go.
That is really cool.
Yeah, there's my opinion on that. Wasn't my favorite, but it had a purpose, I guess.
Very nice. And you talked about little details matter. And one of the things in the season finale that really stood out to me was halftime of the game, they're losing. And Ted Lasso quips about how the team looks like a Renaissance painting portraying masculine melancholy. And then just picturing that in my head, that was funny. But then they pan to the scene and it looks just like it was perfectly done, perfectly executed. And it was just, that's like needs to be like a piece of artwork. It's just so well done. It was wonderful.
Oh, it was beautiful. They're hanging that actual scene in the Sistine Chapel as we speak, by the way. So they've already decided it's becoming a piece of art. I mean, but Ted even referenced that earlier too when he was talking about you know, McAdoo. And he looks like the chiseled out. What did he say? Chiseled out sculpture. Why can't I remember it? But the one of the guy like this. And then that's exactly
the Rodin thinker.
The Rodin sculpture.
Okay.
It's the small things. It's the small things that were so unnecessary, but the writers were like, "We're doing it.
Yeah.
We're putting it in there." And I love that because they didn't have to. They didn't have to do that. It did not add anything to the plot, but they wanted to, and that's what makes this show charming. And I just want to go to the writer's room and just like hug all of them and be like, thank you for the small things.
I just want to hang out in the writer's room and just hear all the creativeness that must be in there. Yeah. My goodness, just to like, you know, have that kind of wash over me, and somehow I can through osmosis just like make myself more creative. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I heard this is the first time they're actually doing the writing in person. For season 3, actually, because the previous ones that had been all through Zoom, which they created masterpiece of season 1 through Zoom. That's a feat in and of itself. So I can't wait to see what they're going to do for season 3. I think when he was on Ellen the other day, they were talking and Ellen said, "Oh, you guys are writing it here in LA." And he was like, "Yeah, it's at Warner Brothers Studio." So they actually have a writer's room for the first time. So
very cool.
I think we're going to see a lot more small things and little nuances thrown in there too that I just can't wait for.
Well, since we're looking forward to season 3 so much, let's just give a quick recap. Not a recap, but give me your quick top 3, if you can, moments from season 2 or season 1 that, those are the top 3 that stand out to you. Maybe it's a whole episode. Maybe it's just a little nuanced detail. Give me your top 3.
Oh man, that's hard. Gosh, that's really hard because there's just so many fantastic, brilliant.
I put you on the spot there. I know.
It's hard. I just love so much of what the show, portrays and just talks about. I'd say probably one of my favorite things just happened in this last episode, which we haven't really talked much about, the actual backstabbing coming to fruition of, all right, when is Ted gonna bring it up to Nate? Is he gonna bring it up to Nate? What's gonna happen to Nate? Is he gonna fire him? And Beard's pushing him. He's like, I'm not gonna bring it up to Nate. Like, I was just gonna let it kind of blow over. He's gonna come to me. Yeah. Beard's like, no, he's not coming to you, man. You gotta push him a little bit. It's Nate. Come on. And just how lovely of a friend Beard is. Like, when he's like, Ted's like, you probably know what happened this morning. He's like, nope, no idea. And the newspaper is just in his back pocket. I'm like, I love that. I love their friendship. I love their friendship. Sorry, I'm like so off track here. Let's get back to it. But just fine. Beard being like, hey, you need to push Nate. And Ted just is dreading. He's like, I'm not going to do it. And then at halftime, he finally gets the chance to, it's just him and Nate one-on-one. And he walks into the office and says, hey, man, what's your problem? What's your problem with me? What's going through your head? What can I learn from this? What do I need to learn from this? And I was like, how profound. Everyone's Ted's going to fire Nate. Ted's going to finally crack and show that he's not this nice person. That I'm like, that's just so uncharacteristic of him. He's not going to do that. And I posted all of my predictions for the episode before it came out. And I'm like, Ted has been the most steadfast character throughout this whole thing. You've just seen more layers of him, but the same person has always been there. And
very true.
His biggest thing is, I'm not going to let someone, walk past me, meet me where I'm at without considering where they're at, because of his dad. And so I love how his character stayed true. And that's so intentional by Jason, to just say like, no, Ted really is just a genuine, kind man with a good soul who isn't going to take his anger and use it for bad to blow up on someone. He's going to use it to learn something. I was like, what a beautiful concept. What can I learn from this? What do I need to learn from you, Nate? And it wasn't even, Nate, I'm mad at you. How dare you betray me and backstab me and throw my biggest secret out to the world. It was, what can I learn from you? What do I need to learn from you? How can I do better? I was like, my heart just broke into a million pieces. So that is by far probably my number one most favorite moment. And just shows the power of forgiveness.
That was a huge theme throughout as well. Yeah, forgiveness.
Oh, yeah. Forgiving Rebecca, forgiving his wife for not having feelings for him, forgiving, he's never not forgiven someone in this series except for his father, which even, in this season, he finally did eventually forgive him there. And so I was always thinking, there's no way he's not going to forgive Nate. There's no way.
Right.
He's been too constant of a good human and someone who knows the power of forgiveness. He's not going to blow up. He's not going to fire Nate. So that was just such a great scene, and something that everyone, all of humanity, can learn from. You can learn something from every situation.
And I think it harkens back to season 1 and the dart scene where he said he learned to be curious, not judgmental. So because he didn't, like you said, he didn't blow up on him. He listened.
Right.
He sat there. He let Nate have his moment, have his say, and he listened. He didn't even give a retort back to him. He just kind of, Nate stormed off and he just let it go.
Yep.
Because he knew that Nate needed to have that release, I guess, and be able to blow that off. And and it reminds me of what Coach Beard said to Lasso about releasing or his mustache was going to pop off.
Yeah, that was good too. He's like, but I actually really like your mustache. Right. Beard is the unsung hero, man. And especially when Nate's like, oh, you don't want to headbutt me, Roy? I kissed Keely.
I do.
And he was like, I'll headbutt you, Nate. Nate's got to know that he knows, and
I think Coach Beard, played by Brendan Hunt, is just one of my favorite characters. And his After Hours episode, which it was one of the 2 standalone episodes from the season that was created after they had their 10 episode arc. Right. So it's a episode where we learn about Coach Beard's life outside of the locker room, outside of his connection with Ted. And I think that episode to me was brilliant. I know it wasn't completely well received, but I just think the cinematography of it, I felt like I was watching a film by Edgar Wright. It was it was just so beautifully done. It had everything. It had the comedy, it had the tension. I just love that episode so much. That was probably one of my top favorite moments from this season was that episode.
That's interesting because, like you said, it was not super well received from everyone. And I think that goes to, again, the writing staff and producers. And, oh my gosh, in that episode, everyone, crew, cast, camera operators, visual effects. I mean, incredible. That episode was for the classicists and for the pessimists and for Martin Scorsese fans.
After Hour,
It was not for everyone, but I love that it wasn't. Because not everyone likes Beard, and that's okay. But, not everyone likes Ted either. And so for the Beard, DJ Beardo fans, that was their episode. And people who love never-ending conflict like the Odyssey, and there's just something about people who can pay homage to things that came from the past and make it into something into today's character, and that's something that Jason and Brendan and Bill Lawrence do so well, is pay homage to things from the past. The Iverson speech. Oh my God.
That's true. Yeah.
There's so many moments. Really cool. Yeah. There's
practice. You don't want to go to practice.
Yeah. But there's just so many of those moments where it was clearly very significant to them in real life. To Jason, that Iverson speech had an impact. To Brendan, he always talks about his mushroom trips in Amsterdam, and that's kind of what you felt like. You're like, am I wrong? Is this what a mushroom trip feels like? I've never done mushrooms before, but if I did, I imagine this is probably what it freaking feels like. Who else? There's just so many moments that happened in real life that they took and used it and twisted it and changed it, modified it for the episodes. That I just think that's so cool and so brilliant of them. I'm waiting for them personally I would love to see them do the Russell Westbrook speech where he just goes after the press and starts talking, we executed well. And and just kept saying the word executed over and over again. Like he was clearly angry at one of the journalists for saying that was not a great game. Like, you didn't play that great. And he's like, well, we executed. So I'm just curious to see like what happens next and what they're going to take next and pay homage. But I love that. Yeah. I love that so much. And they make them all have different meanings too. Right. Mm-hmm. So I just think that stuff is incredible. I love that.
Well, I think that I'll leave with my final moment that truly loved in the show. And it was also from the other Christmas episode, is Keely and Roy talking with Phoebe about her dental issues.
Really? That was your favorite?
I think I laughed the most in that because the way, so the niece has, I guess, a rotten tooth or something like that. And Roy Kent says, hey, let me smell. It can't be that bad. So she gives him a whiff of her breath and he just like gags. And I don't know why I was laughing so much for that, but it was just hilarious. And then she does it again to Keely and she's just like trying to hold it in, but she can't.
Yeah.
And I just laughed so hard in that part. I don't know why. It was just funny to me.
Oh, that was hilarious. And you can see, I don't know how he did it, but his face is like this close to the camera and his eyes are watering and he's just like, that was really good. That was amazing. I was cracking up too. I looked at my husband. I think we both had to literally pause it because we were laughing for so long. We're like, we've got to pause this. We don't want to miss anything. Let's laugh it out and then move on. Yeah. But that scene, one of my favorites was like you said, the dart scene, the barbecue sauce, like just, and then he just looks over and you see like, this is the first time that he's actually really standing up for Rebecca. He called him out at the gala, but this was him really being like, look, you're staying away from us and our family. This is our family.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're not a part of it anymore. And I loved that. And just, why did he say barbecue sauce? We'll never know, but they threw that in there. I think that's hilarious. Oh man, so many good moments. I don't know how you choose any of them. There's just a huge laundry list of greatness. It was hard.
It really is. It really is. And that's just a testament to the writing. And I think before this show, I never really thought about the writers so much.
Yes.
Things get written, obviously shows get written, but I never really focused on who the writers were of TV shows. But then after watching this and the way the showrunner, Bill Lawrence, the way the Jason Sudeikis, Brendan Hunt give credit to those writers.
Yes.
And they want you to know who it was that wrote that. I think that's very admirable as well.
Yeah.
And it made me, wow, these writers are really talented and really creative, and I want to go learn more about them and see what else they're doing. So kudos to everyone involved with this show. We're both huge fans of it, and I thank them. I really do, because the show really means a lot to me. I know it's just a TV show, but it really touched me more than I ever thought it would.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely something that makes an imprint on your heart. That's for sure. And that's, again, testament to just the kind of people that all of the producers are, the executive producers, the showrunners. They're very humble and generous and kind, and they're letting the writers take the spotlight when it's their turn. And that's hard to see in an industry that's so cutthroat and so selfish and so about me. And I think that's just what's something so special about this show is they're all that kind in real life too. And they really do all love and care about each other and want other people to succeed. It's not this, Jason's this big star and he's the main thing and he's, the entire circus is about him. They're sharing the credit, and I love that too. And some of the writers actually show up in the episodes, like Beard's girlfriend, Phoebe, she's one of the writers. Like,
that's true.
It's not often that you see a show that does that. So I can't wait to see what they all do next. I can't wait to see what they do with season 3. I have my predictions, of course, with what's going to happen and what that juicy secret's going to be in Ted's office, next year. But the way that the season finale ended, it tied up so many loose ends, and it just really wrapped up so wonderfully that I'm like, you laughed, you cried. I thought that I was going to want so much more after seeing it. Like, oh, I need to see the next episode. But for some reason, I had this kind of like peace about it. Like, I can wait
That's
6
true.
months. Like, they tied up everything that I needed to know. They gave some hints for next season. They ended the show on Nate, which was the person who started off the first episode, if you remember, up close. Great, brilliant camera work there and themes. But I was like, I could breathe. I exhaled and I'm like, I can wait. I can wait.
Right.
It wasn't some like cliffhanger where I'm like, I gotta know, like this guy's bleeding out on the floor and then they just cut it off. Like, does he die or no? It's like they wrapped it up nicely, and right now they're putting together another package for us to open up next season. And like, I'm good to wait. So I've never felt so content and like at peace with a in-between season finale, I guess. So we'll see.
I completely agree. Well, thank you very much, Tori, for coming on to our little talks here in PopCultX. Now, if people want to follow you on Twitter, where can they find you? What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah. So, well, first off, thank you for having me on. I was ecstatic when you messaged me and asked me. I was like, absolutely. I talk about Ted Lasso. I'll do that every day. My Twitter handle is Tori King TV. It's TORIKING TV. It's my journalist and personal account. I kind of combine them. And
right on.
Yeah, so you can find me there. And then my Instagram handle is ToriKing00.
Right on. Yeah, make sure everyone you go follow Tori. And I know she has something brewing up her sleeves for maybe our enjoyment, maybe some podcast or something. I don't know, but make sure you go there, tune in, and stay tuned for what's coming next with Tori. I'm really excited to see what she's going to bring to the table. And thank you again very much, Tori. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I again, thank you so much for having me. There is some stuff in the works, a podcast possibly coming out. And yeah, anytime, I'd be happy to come back and chat more Ted Lasso with you any day.